Hi, everybody, and welcome to our first lecture, our first full lecture on the Great Divorce. Today, we're going to be focusing specifically on page 1 in your PDFs. So, if you're following along, please get out page 1 for your PDFs, and we're going to go through it in some pretty extensive detail. These videos are for you to watch and also to help guide you through the readings and parts that might be particularly confusing that I would like to spend a little bit more time looking at. So let's look at the first paragraph. I seem to be standing in a bus queue, which is a line, by the side of a long, mean street. What is this supposed to be bringing us into? Well, first, it's just supposed to give us the context of the place that we're in, and Lewis will, over the next few pages, be telling us more about this space that we're in. But he begins the first line of his book, the first sentence, by talking about the streets that he's in as being mean. So we should think of the place that he's in as being nasty. And that should kind of color the way that we understand the rest of this space for the entire book. Another thing that you'll see in the coming lines is it talking about how it's a dreary evening and it's right before dusk. So it's right before all the lights come on in the houses and on the streets. And it's during the middle of a rainstorm that hasn't ended, despite the fact that Lewis's character has been walking around for hours. Okay. So what you should be thinking of is miserable evening, miserable space, miserable city. Okay, with me so far? And next we need to move forward into the second paragraph. We're introduced in this line to a married couple. Okay, so in the queue, in the line. And they say, very well then, I won't go at all. So there. And the woman left the queue. Pray don't imagine, said the man in a very dignified voice, that I care about going in the least. I have only been trying to please you for peace sake. My own feelings are, of course, a matter of no importance. I quite understand that. And suiting the accent to the word, he also walked away. What is Lewis trying to direct us to here? Well, obviously he's trying to direct us to a miserable couple. We still don't know where this line is leading to. We still don't know where the bus is going, but we do know that there's this miserable married couple that's standing in line of it. And I want to spend a few moments focusing on that. Why is he directing our attention to a miserable married couple? Well, he's going back to Scripture. I said in the last video that Lewis doesn't base his imagery on anything specific, but just the general milieu, the sort of watery space where all these ideas are floating about, right? So he's taking these ideas from, well, St. Paul's understanding of marriage. So let's look in our Bibles to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 32 to 34. St. Paul says, I want you to be free from anxieties. The unmarried man is anxious about the affairs of the Lord, how to please the Lord. But the married man is anxious about the affairs of the world, how to please his wife. And his interests are divided. And the unmarried woman and the virgin are anxious about the affairs of the Lord, so that they may be holy in body and spirit. But the married woman is anxious about the affairs of the world, how to please her husband. I say this for your own benefit, not to put any restraint upon you, but to promote good order and unhindered devotion to the Lord. What is St. Paul saying here? Well, he's not saying that marriage is bad. What he is saying, though, is that marriage brings with it its own complexities, and that oftentimes it can turn our faces and our attention away from the Lord himself and towards our spouse. To a certain extent, this is a right focus. Why? Because it's our job to make sure that our spouses are okay, that we're providing for our homes, we're providing for the well-being of our spouses. What's the problem here? The problem comes in when our focus on our spouses takes away from our attention to the Lord, takes away from our ultimate focus on the sacrament of marriage as oriented towards getting the other person to heaven. If at any point our desire for the other person's happiness gets in between our desire for them to be in heaven, then we're kind of failing our marriage promises. That's what Lewis is trying to bring to our attention. And quite obviously, as we'll find out in the next few pages, the whole point of this bus journey is to get all of these people to heaven. So then what is happening? The man and the woman are losing their attention on getting the other person to heaven, quite literally, and are simply focusing on the other person's happiness. And neither of them are willing to attend to the other person's desire, the other person's needs, to get them to where their soul truly needs to be. The rest of that section simply focuses on a man who is aggressive and punches somebody else out of line, which is funny, but not particularly important. All of the rest of that second paragraph is to try and say is that this is an aggressive place, a place filled with violence. And what we should be thinking about this space that we haven't really had defined for us yet is that it's a place of violence, of self-focus, and really just a complete space of being turned away from God. Soon I'll be posting your second lecture on the next page of The Great Divorce, and you can follow along as I give these page-by-page lectures in the PDF for The Great Divorce. Okay, thanks everybody for tuning in. I miss you guys. Have a great rest of your day.